Hello everyone, it's Xiao, and one of the most common questions I get is how I paint skin. So I'm going to show you how I do that. First, I'm going to find a reference picture. Here's my reference. Not the same pose, but here's the lighting that I'm going for. So always reference, no shame in it, you just gotta do it. Okay. And here's some simple line art. Well, it's not really line art, it's a sketch that I did for this demo. First things first, I'm going to take this line art layer and decrease the opacity. Add a new layer underneath and pick a suitable skin tone for this character. Maybe something like use the lasso tool and select the area that I want the color to be in. It literally does not have to be perfect because you're going to paint over it anyways later. For now, this is just to get the colors blocked in. Like that. No, I'm not quite pink enough. Okay. Okay, and then just for the sake of this image overall, I'm going to also put in the hair. Press Shift to add to your selection. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just gotta get it in. Okay, I'm gonna do it in 2 separate layers because there's kind of hair on top of the skin layer and then there's hair underneath it. So I'm gonna divide it into 2 layers here. And hold Alt to get rid of part of your selection. I think that's good enough. We'll make it kind of a dark, almost black brown. And then underneath that, I'm going to create another layer. Fill that in. The shapes obviously need to be refined, so you can go in with a brush with absolutely no pressure sensitivity. It's just a completely opaque brush. And go in and fix some of the shapes, but that's not really important right now. The main thing is we're going to get to painting the skin. So what I'm going to do is establish the environment a little bit to get the lighting to actually make sense. So, can I add some green in the back? Oh, I'm going to switch to an airbrush. And then maybe some golden yellows. And yes, I'm going off of the reference, so that's why I say references are important. I'm going to go for one of those, like, really kind of blurry, out of focus background that you don't really have to make sense of. Just kind of vaguely look like some kind of nature forest thing going on in the back. Okay. I think that might be a little bit too green, so we're going to adjust that and make it a little browner. Control U brings up hue saturation adjustments. Okay, and then just one more layer. I think I'm going to add a shirt in, just as a point of reference. And her shirt will probably be some white color, so I'm going to put in a gray just as a placeholder. Okay, so and start shading. Create a new layer on top, clip it to the underlying skin layer that we just created, and then set this thing to multiply. Now, looking at the lighting situation, it's probably like backlit, kind of golden hour looking. So the sky, I'm thinking, is probably kind of a yellowish golden color. right? So we're going to go for a darker, maybe an orange color. Ooh, too saturated. There we go. It's probably a bit better. Okay, we're gonna go with that color for now. Let's see if there's a better color. I think that looks a bit better and more in line with the reference. It's actually a green color. I knew. Alright, we're gonna go in with a hard brush as an eraser, and we're going to erase out places on this shape, but we're gonna add a mask first. So, mask, we're gonna erase out the areas where we want it to be lit. I'm gonna use this brush here. So I'll find the shapes that are on the face that need to be lit and highlighted and erase them all out. There's her bottom lip, some of her top lip. It's not her lip, it's her philtrum area. I don't know. Go back to her nose. And this here. And if you want to bring some of that shading back, switch to a black brush and get rid of the, or add the mask back in. Get rid of the mask? Either way. The masks only work with black and white and shades of gray, I suppose. And this way it's easier because you don't have to try and eyedrop the color of your shading, because it's on a multiply layer. You won't really be able to eyedrop it accurately unless you switch it back to normal, which is kind of a pain. So I prefer to do this. And you can use the brush tool as well. It does this exact same thing. If you don't have to use the eraser tool, you can use the brush tool. And take your time with this. Identify the shapes. Don't rush it, because if you rush it, it's not gonna look good later. Okay, so that looks a little bit funny right now. But that's okay, because we're going to change the color of the lighting as well. What we're going to do is add another layer. We're going to create a clipping mask. And we're going to change the blending layer to blending mode to overlay. And we're going to pick our lighting color. Probably like a warm orange. And let's see if these colors work. If they don't, we can always change it. Okay, so what we're going to do is add a mask. Gonna control click the multiply layer mask, control shift I, which is invert the selection. Make sure on the mask for the orange layer, and make sure your background color is black. Press X to switch it, and hit delete. Wait, hang on. I had it backwards. What? Okay, I had it backwards. There you go. And that looks okay. It's a little too yellow, so let's change it to something a little bit warmer now. And a little bit lighter. Okay. Alright, so that's the basic shape of the light and the dark areas. Now the character still looks a little bit dead because there's no color in any area of her face. So let's go back to overlay, and we're gonna choose a pink color, right? Go to your brushes. And switch to an airbrush. Gonna add some pink to areas that should be pink. So we're gonna do her cheeks. Her lips. I think her lips should be a little bit darker, so we can go a little darker here. The tip of her nose, kind of across the nose bridge, right? With some on her ears. And I don't think that's quite strong enough, so we're going to add another layer, go to multiply, and use the same technique. We're going to use some more pink. Oh, there we go. And pink. And going with an airbrush on your eraser to get rid of some of it. Right, oh, that's a little too red. I'm going to go a little darker with the lip. There we go. And we're going to add a little bit of pink around the eyes. Okay, just add a little bit more variety, go back to the overlay layer, and then we're gonna maybe add a little bit of kind of a cyan bluish color, not too much, because the chin area generally is a little bit more blue on people's faces. But this is more true for men who have stubble, less true for women who generally don't have stubble. But if she does, then definitely add a little bit more. And then we're going to add a little bit more yellow to her forehead, because that's generally the color that's associated with the forehead. Okay, so then we're going to add another layer on top of this multiply layer that we had. We're going to set it to multiply again. And this time we're going to add a mask, but fill it in with black. We don't want to see it yet. And go back to the colored layer. Maybe we're gonna put in a more warmer color. And start with a color and see how it looks, and if we don't like it, we can change it. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the mask layer, and we are going to paint in, this time, some of the darker shadow areas. If it will let me. Okay, there we go. So that would be stuff like underneath the eyebrow bridge, or the eyebrow ridge, underneath the nose here, the side of the nose, the top lip, the cheek here. We'll get rid of this part. Underneath the chin here, the jawline, some of this neck area. So the idea here is to keep the darker shadows in the areas that already are in shadow, right? So we don't want to put it here. We want to try and stick with the shadow areas. Add some in here. I know this looks very anime right now, but this is just to get the basic shapes of the shading in, and then we will start blending, painting, and rendering later. So, get the basic shapes in. Let's put some in here. And what else? Right here. Pretty great. I don't like the color, so we're gonna go back to color layer and change it. Sure, we'll leave it like that. And then at this point, we're going to go back to the face, right? And then select the part of the eye that's the sclera, which is the white part of the eye. I say quote white because it's not actually white. It just looks white compared to the rest of the face. So So we're going to move the saturation down quite a bit. Maybe move it over a bit to make it a little bit more pink. And then deselect that. Alright, so that gives you the eyeball. We're going to add a little bit more shading there. So let's add some shading for the lids here. Alrighty, great. So we are now going to merge everything down. So now you can merge every single layer down to the skin layer that you had previously. Now we're going to go in and blend. So I blend with an airbrush. There's nothing fancy about it. It's just an airbrush. And we're going to blend out some of these hard edges, right, using that airbrush. And the harder your edge, the smaller the brush you use. The softer you want it, the bigger the brush you use. And so generally cast shadows have a harder edge than you would find in a form shadow, right? And I want this to be a smile. I don't want it to look like she's got really deep nasal labial folds. So I'm going to take it easy with this line here. And at this point, you can also merge down part of your line art. So I'm going to take my line art, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to create a clipping mask and do the same thing and merge it down into my skin and hide the original line art layer. So now we're going to paint out the line art. Now when you have these edges, it helps to keep one edge sharp when you have these shapes, right? So I've got a sharp edge on this side, and this other side I'm going to blend out more with my airbrush. And just keep going. Make sure you keep an eye on the edges that you've got. I'm going to make her lip a little bit more pink. It's getting a bit lost in the super duper shadowed areas. So add a bit more in. There we go. Right, and then here, on the other side of the lip here, there is a shadow right here, so don't leave that out. Make sure you put that in. And this should also be slightly softer. Now make sure you lock this layer, because you don't want to go out of the edges. And lose that beautiful shape that we established. So, of course, if you want to adjust the shape of the head, you know, you can unlock it and use an eraser, go in with a harder edge, and clean up the shape. So I'm going to zoom out, just double check where I'm at. Okay. Let's kind of make all of these edges softer, but the outside edge where the nose overlaps with the face, I'm going to keep that sharp because it's technically a separate object from the face. So I want that to stand out on its own. And blend out the shadows on the eyes. Alright, so this is getting somewhere, yeah? Great, so we're going to go in with another layer, and we're going to add some surface scattering. This is where skin is, or flesh on people is, generally speaking, kind of semi-transparent. So light will shine on the skin, it'll go through, it'll bounce around, and it'll come back out. So you're going to have to add some color to it. And generally speaking, it's going to be kind of a pinkish color. Or an orangey pink. Not multiplying, we're going to go to overlay. Find kind of an orangey pink color. Add some to the transition areas between the lights and the shadows. I'm going to zoom out for this, just to get a better look at my piece. Go in with an airbrush to get rid of areas that are a little too strong. And some other areas where I think there should be some bounce light. So I'm thinking there should be some bounce light on the bottom of her nose. I think that's a little too dark. I'm gonna make it a little lighter. And there should be some bounce light on her cheek here. By bounce light, I mean the light that comes from the sun will hit her shirt or something in the environment, and it'll bounce right back onto her face. Okay, so we're going to merge that down. And now I'm looking at it from farther away. I think this shadow on her cheek is too bright. So we're going to create a new layer. Sorry, not bright. The shadow is too dark. We're going to create a new layer, and we're going to paint it out a little bit. Maybe add some more pink to this area. Great. All right, merge that down. And I'm going to go in and, you know, my canvas is really small. Generally, I paint very, very small unless I do to detail. I'm going to ease up on the shadows here too because they're looking a little too contrasty. I want this to kind of look a little bit softer, especially around her more delicate features. Right. Blend that out a bit more. This, blend this giant shadow out. And some more shadow around this area. Right, like it's completely normal at this point also for some of your facial features to move around, because sometimes it looks fine as line art, but then when you start painting it, things move around and you're like, oh, wait, it doesn't look quite right. So it's totally okay for it to change. I think the eyeball is a little bit too dark because this side should not be in shadow. Add some lights to this eyeball. It's looking a little freaky because she doesn't have irises yet. I'll do an eye tutorial separately, but let's give some more dimension to those sclera. And just so she doesn't look completely freaky, you're gonna grab a brown color and add in some eyeballs, or irises. Okay. So what you're gonna do is put in a circle trace out the area that you don't need. Does that look right? Oh, I think this is a little small, so we're gonna make this a little bit bigger. And when you're drawing slightly less realistic, actually even realistic people, it's okay to make them look a little bit cross-eyed, quote, quote. Because then it looks like they're actually focusing on something and not looking dead and in some random direction that doesn't make sense. Perfect. Okay. And then from here you can keep using an airbrush and go in and like blend it out a little bit more. Check your references again, just to make sure it makes sense. Add some cast shadow related to hair or anything else that might be in the way. Clean that up. And then in some areas where there's like ambient occlusion, which is areas where light doesn't really get to, simply because of the shapes and forms that overlap, you can go in and get a darker color. I don't think it's saturated enough. I'm gonna make a more saturated dark color and go in and define her jawline right there. Add in the creases on our face for the smile lines again. Be careful not to do this with them because it makes the character look kind of old, so... And that's really about it. And then sometimes I will go in with... Ooh, okay, so the shadow doesn't make sense up here. Fix this. And so you kind of take a step back and see if there's anything you want to improve with it. Is this too dark? I think overall it might be a little bit too dark, so I'll do a clipping mask and then go to color dodge, right? Now we're going to change the blending modes, I guess, to that, and we'll go in with this color and see how it looks. Maybe a little warmer. Ooh, too much. And add some color dodge to it. Let's do this. More of a pink color maybe back here. Just to bring some more color and light into the shadow areas, because just because it's in shadow doesn't mean there's no light. I still think the shadow is too dark. And also probably time to find a better reference, because the reference is exactly the same angle. So go with a harder brush, find that edge again. And up here in the eyebrow area, generally speaking, this edge starts to gradiate out because your nose connects to your eyebrow area. Some more eye socket here. A spider. And then, of course, there's also shadows from the hair. It's in front of her face. We'll use a more saturated color. Okay, and if you really want to, you can even go in with super light color and just emphasize some of the lighter areas. There should be a cast shadow on her lip here. And for her nostril, it's important to not make it too dark because then it'll just be really distracting on the face. And remember subsurface scattering, so this area is going to be quite pink. Oh, too dark. I'll make it a little bit later. Okay, and then you can go in with a darker color to emphasize the area of ambient occlusion, which is like the corner of the mouth, more areas of the mouth, maybe like one end of the nostril. And then we can go in and give her some highlights. And I like to use a more textured brush to add some highlights, so we can give her some highlights here. Just the edges of the lip, highlights on her lip. Maybe a highlight on her bottom lid there. And finally on her nose. So that's generally how I paint skin. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and we're gonna move on to eyes next time. So see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.